So I thought I'd make a video talk about a few other things I wanted to talk about. There's a broad of discussions that I want to talk about. Do I think any of them are really effective and important? Sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself too much, but wanted to talk about this when 9/11 happened, and I wasn't scared because by that time I had already experienced boot camp, jail, military boot camp, and the military boot camps they were military. Like the guys that showed up at the military camp, they were military. There weren't just guys that just wore military outfits. Most of those guys were real life. They were in the military and still serving in the military. Some weren't, which were like I can't remember how they defined them. They were like volunteers. They want to help kids fix out their life and shit. Because the people that I was around with were real dangerous. Like when I went there, it was only black people that went there. It was only bad kids. So all the bad, you might get like, out of that whole group of people, like 100, sometimes it'd be up to like, like 5, 10, 120 people. And you get like, I think there were days there were 120 kids, 100 kids there, 85 kids there, at least like 80 kids there were every time. And these kids were hardcore, like hardcore from the ghettos, and all of them came from the ghettos. Many of them had tattoos, been in prison, jail, gang banging, shootings, drug dealings. Bomba fluid was a very popular thing in those days, and if you know what bomba fluid is, they would smoke that shit, and it's the shit that you put in dead people to preserve their bodies. And these guys weren't, everybody's there with the intention to try to do good, but there were days that we would show up weekends and somebody would get killed. We'd show up and so and so. Did you hear about that guy 3 weeks ago? He was shot and killed. And he was just here last weekend. And you'd hear about these stories, and and then something else happens to somebody else. Somebody else committed a murder, and these are probably some of the most hardest of people. You might get like 2 or 3 white guys, and that was it. On a good day, you might get 2 or 3 guys that were white there, and the rest were like, cholos, Mexicans. You could tell that everybody there came from the poor. Everybody there, you could tell, came from broken homes and the poorest and ghettos. Everybody, and I recall, experiencing that, and then that whole situation, 9/11 happened, and I remember I was in my science class, and the teacher was the referee, or he was dressed as a referee. I don't know why. I think he was a coach. He was like a basketball coach. I think he was, or some kind of coach, in athletics, and he reeled in the TV. One building had already fallen. I didn't even know there was 2, but one building was only there, and so I don't even know. I just sort of see these sort of like debris and papers and shit flying and smoke, and everybody's just kind of like those are the Twin Towers. Somebody had been in New York before and said, I've been in New York. Well, those are supposed to be Twin Towers. There's 2 of them. There's supposed to be another one right next to it. And he goes, the teacher said that, So anyway, I showed up to my class. I don't even know if I showed up late. I think I did, or I don't know. No, I think the teacher showed up late because the whole situation, and he reeled in the, so we could watch what was going on, and I wasn't scared. To me, because I had already experienced, like, at that point in my life, people don't realize what other people have to go through. Okay, so I had a tremendous buildup, like a huge buildup to I was like 12 years old, taking care of my father, buddies, going to a bar, and then he kills himself. And I walk into a nursing home, he doesn't even know his name. And I'm like the guy with him, going to video update, we're going to the bar, I play video games, he goes to my soccer games, he drinks beer at the house, watching movies all the time, telling me war stories, had me watch Schindler's List, letting me know what World War II, and my father used to tell me, my father told me he did an autopsy. And it's weird, because my father would talk to me kind of like an adult, like the reality of shit. Like he told me he had done an autopsy, like cut somebody up open, and he said he went in there and he was a nurse, or he was like going to school to be a nurse, and he said he wanted to. He walked in there and they did a full. They were doing an autopsy, and it was just somebody that was opened up and on a gurney, and he was going to school at the time. And my father was a caretaker of the sick, and it was brutal. So for those that don't understand, I understood very clearly the unbelievable courage, not you just had to have in brains, the courage you had to work in that field of work, because the contamination of bacteria and the dangers of being around sick people. Now it's a lot more safer. Back then, you could get polio. My father told me it was one of the reasons he wanted to leave nursing was because he didn't want to bring the sickness to his family. Like he said he never understood. I remember telling him this. Never understood why he never got sick. He said they always had him do the shit work. Basically, there was like the end work of everything. They didn't really let him exercise his brains like he had the ability to. Meaning he's hand spooning people that were dying, and he'd have conversations, and he said he had conversations with them sometimes. And this is how he met his first wife. So if y'all don't know, this is how he met his first wife, who had a third of her lung removed. Anyway, so life goes on, and he kills himself. Vegetable. I'm 12 years old, and for 4 years, I'm going to, for like the first 6 months, I'm going to mental facilities to go visit my father. And I'm watching all these other people that are sick. He's in diapers. Sarah is threatening my mother. Ken Cooper don't give a fuck. I mean, it was just a power trip over my mother, and it was just. And so, for 4 years, I had to go to nursing homes, and give my dad support, watching people, and I built a tolerance, and I was very adapted to it because most of these people were old. My dad was already old, and so when I walk into these places. You carry the sense, there's always a sense of death. The reality that in religion, I grew up going to Christian and Catholic beliefs, churches, where human beings have souls, and the kindness that you give to these people who lived a life, that life is important, and that's why you take care of them, because that's why life is important. It's like you take care of them because life is important, and you're a human. And so that's what you do. And if you don't, God will punish you. So, but you understand, some people deal with it a little bit different. It's a bit of, you start understanding, and I mean, maybe not the best of words, you start feeling comfortable with the situation. You hear people crying, you hear beeping noises of death, and you look at these people they're not going to be alive very long, and you understand that, so you just build a relationship with them. And for me, I really took that as I don't think you probably couldn't have got anybody better. I don't think you couldn't have got any, because most of the friends and people, you're always kind of seeking a reward of a payout of money. But for me, it was more of a sort of a spiritual um, duty, and teaching lesson for me, and that's the way that I saw that, because I understood these people live their life. I lived with an old man that told me his old stories and already had a prior life. So when I come to these people, and you get used to seeing that, and you get adapted to it. That's the nature of human life, and you then start to understand that. I understood pretty quickly that some of these people didn't get there very honestly. They didn't get there very, they didn't get there very honestly. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. You give them the benefit of the doubt that they were good people. But so that's a way to create distance, and your presence is always enough. It's always enough, and I feel empathetic with people sometimes, and so I would go work out, and so when they saw something so youth and full of life, and you're 19 years old, 18, you're pristine and you're in shape, I'd always see their smile, because it made them. I did that intentionally, and it was very formal, because I knew that it'd give them a moment, because nobody visited them, hardly ever, to think about when they were young, and they had these experiences when they had this girl or guy, or when they were young and going about life, So that's why, I was very clear on that. People think that I just walk in there, oh shit, like I was mentally very, very stable, in my opinion, and very clear and detailed of everything that was going on. So then 9/11 happens, and I wasn't scared. I felt really bad for the people that were trapped in there, and the reason I kind of did this, and I kind of just felt empathetic for the people that were in there. And I talked about this before, which I didn't mention before. It's not healthy to think, because people are jumping out of a building committing suicide from being burned alive, and you have a different perspective. And my dad had committed suicide, and I sort of just looked away for a moment and sort of just gave a prayer that, that whatever that situation that you're in, I hope that you're the best of comfort, what you're about to do, what you have to do, or what's about to happen, and that's it. Just that was it for your life. Just this is where you're gonna have to let go. You have to let go of everything. It's just you letting go of everything, and if there's an afterlife, God, and you have no choice. There's no talking. There's, and that's it. And then it, and then I was thinking, and I don't know if I had a smirk, because when I looked, because I looked and I went, and I kind of did like that, like. And I kind of did that because I was thinking immediately after that, George Bush, my dad, and now I have more responsibility. Shit, if I don't have to deal with this already, now I got this now that seems to be but on my responsibility, and I'm 16. Okay, so on to the next, and I feel like I was overwhelmed, and I knew that it wasn't healthy. There were some slip-ups that I had. I was like 16. I was like 17 when I told, or 18. I was like 18 or 17 whenever I told. It was like a year after I mentioned it to Jack Murphy. I said, my dad spoke to the president, and he got real quiet, and he's just looking at the TV. We used to watch boxing matches and shit, and he just looked at me and looked at the TV like, oh shit. Like, he didn't say anything like, oh shit, but anyway, that was kind of the situation with that. So I thought it was important for me to talk about, as my phone seems to be dying. And yeah, so in the second, so in this particular situation is I went about my business, and that was pretty much it. I think my father just told me this because he kind of had of a thrill, like kind of like whenever I kind of feel sometimes that we met Michael Jackson, I kind of think I felt like that was kind of for him. Like, because I just think that my father was just a very small person, in a way that, because I remember I was leaving McDonald's and he was just smoking, like, yeah, you got it, all right, like I got it, I got it, like he got a badge of honor or some shit, like he was the man, and I'm just kind of like just tagging along in this, and but that was pretty much it. So I didn't mention it ever once, and I was very clear-headed about it. I don't think that I knew that whatever the circumstances is, it's best for the adults because they can abuse that information with that. And I don't think the president and his people are not going to want me to say anything. And this is like at the highest level of intelligence beings. Just let me go about my business and just keep doing what I'm doing. Let everybody keep doing what they're doing. And if whatever they're being watched in, then to the nature of what it is, and then you start to unravel that life just kind of goes on, and some people don't care, and but it wasn't going to be a good thing, especially in my environment. So, yeah, I thought I'd talk about that. I felt like telling Lisa. I want to say I felt like telling her. I remember I wanted to tell her, but I didn't tell her because I didn't want to scare her. And I knew she would have got, because I think I did talk to her over the phone. Like, oh, did you watch that? Did you see the did you see the towers fall down or some shit like that? Did you hear about that? And he goes, yeah, well, I was in class, and I want to say I think I remember talking, and I was like this close to telling her, but I didn't want to tell her because she seemed scared. Like, I didn't want to scare her, and I didn't tell her because of that. I didn't want to scare her, and that was flying through my mind, is that I didn't want to scare her. I was like, oh great, I don't want to tell her. It's like, my dad spoke to the president. So I kind of heard her voice. She was kind of sketchy and nervous about that. So, and I knew she stayed in her room pretty often. That was pretty much it. I thought I'd make a video on that. And at 41 years old, and all those years ago, and it would have been such a miracle, I think, what was it? I think DJ Craze, I heard him say this. He said, reminiscing is an awful feeling. Reminiscing your past of, gosh, it would have been nice, it would have been so great if it was, Lisa, because you're always guaranteed 100% find a resolution when you get older. Adults know this very well. They know you absolutely will not have any choice but to find a resolution, but you will never be able to go back. You will find a resolution, but you're not pristine. You will always, because that's life. It moves forward, with or without you, with your agreement or not. It will move forward without you, and you can get creative with it and whatnot, but you have to there's a sense of understanding of letting go of that, and it would have been great. I think about and it's painful. It is. It's very painful. Same thing with Susie. It's the experiences I could have had in my life, and I never did. Never in my youth. Never. And so that was kind of the deal, you know, being out there in the, you know, when 9/11 happened, they had me out there in the boot camp, and it was wild because it was like where everybody was on their toes, and it was in a church, abandoned church. I don't think they had church services there anymore, but it was an abandoned church. Everything was still functional, and they had it was wild for something like that to happen because they selected a few of us, and there was me, and there's a group of us, and I remember specifically, and the unit that I was in, man, I think if we went to the battlefield, it would have been brotherhood for sure. I think it was me. There was a total, let's see, maybe 20 of us, I think it was. About 20 of us. 16 to 20 of us in a unit. We were just outside, and there was full-blown feeling of war. It's not the feeling of thinking. It's not that the feeling of what people think it is. You know, I'd have to go into more patience and more detailed and more lengthy conversation about what that kind of interpreted, the reality of that, because you know you're young, your mental state is very different than it is at this very point. Speaking back. But in that point, you try to get close as you can to what that was. And it's very much war. You know, like why you have men sent out like that. Because we're men, and you get sent out, not women. That's men that hold those firearms and are having shootouts, not women. Women have a different place. And but when it comes to that, physical combat and that type of military, those are men. And you definitely felt, because we all knew, thinking, and there's a sense of all of us, even though we didn't talk with one another at all, because nobody can really there talk to each other, and we're, yes sir, drill sergeant sir, doing push-ups, and we're all standing straight, you know, like you know. And the I think he used to be a preacher, and he was a preacher, and this particular day, this unit, or minister, and this black guy, bald, like shaved head, military pants, and he just kind of walking back and forth, like it was like he was getting ready to send us out. All right, go out there. I need you to go out to the fields and, you know, really do it. But at 16 years old, I was understanding that. So there was a lot of things that helped me along the way to sort of understand, because none of my friends did. And my father was a World War II veteran. But my life went on just like anybody else's. I still had my depression moments, and, you know, it pretty much went on normally as a teenager. You know, you go through this roller coaster of emotions. For me, it was always, you know, trying to get the girl, you know, that I wanted, and, you know, before anybody could get to her, and, you know, get a white girl, you know, a pristine girl, you know. It never happened for me. It never did. And, you know, to build a life with at a young age. But yeah, there's things that helped me along the way, and but they didn't understand that. They didn't understand the brutality. I tell people, and you know, it was the way that it helped, sort of, kind of gave me a path, was always acknowledging the good and bad. You know, you do your compassion, you do your help, and you extract. You think of yourself. Think yourself just for you, and go have a good time. And for me, I was pretty hardcore and raw. I'd go and, You know, sometimes do cocaine on weekends, and then sober up on the weekdays, and then I'd go visit my dad. You know, but I wasn't ever out of order when I visit my father. It was very formal. It was very, it was very formal. I wasn't going out there like a, sniffing my nose and shit, and all this other shit, and I know it sounds really fucked up to do that, but that's how it was. And came from a broken home. Ain't no $1 million ever stopped by here. And but I thought I'd say something about the circumstances. I remember feeling that at Sequoia Academy. I mean, I felt like I was like, this is a million dollar ticket. That now the president made a mistake. I don't think he made a mistake. It just happened to be that he makes a phone call, and I thought maybe I wasn't the only one, but for that circumference, for that time of period, that seemed to have been called upon me when that happened. And I think he got lucky because my father was a World War II veteran as well. Hearing the stories of people dying and getting sick, and him being a nurse, and the racism. Because my father grew up when there was a sign at the door, whites only and then blacks only, or it said not whites only and colors only. When you drank from the fountain, you drank from the dirty fountain. When you went to the bathroom, you went to the dirty bathroom. You didn't get to go to the white bathroom. That's how my father grew up. My father was before TV was around. So, life went on, and life went on about its own business. Other tragedies happened, including me. It wasn't, for whatever money or reality or lottery, there wasn't anything. It was all work. And in fact, I had more things stolen from me for the hard work and things that I had done, and never got rewarded for it. I didn't get anything for it. And then it gets exchanged in conversational because they didn't measure my intelligence well enough. They underestimated me, and that was why. But I kept quiet because there's some people can be extremely very intelligent and genius. They just don't have to be speaking, and they do it for a purposeful of what God thinks. They can have an high IQ, and I'm not saying I do because I don't, but do it because God and respectively would want you, and that's what you're supposed to do. It's your duty. It's what you're supposed to do. Not to take advantage of somebody jumping out of a building being burned alive because they ain't got no fucking choice. Because what happens if that was you? What happens if that was you? You're stuck in a fucking building, someone runs in, you gotta jump out and shit, and think about, well, God exists and what that concrete, the terrors of what we think of religion. Suicide is a guaranteed ticket to hell, but you have no choice. So anyway, I thought I'd talk about that for a minute. But there wasn't any fear like, oh shit, he spoke to the president. Oh, it wasn't that shit. It was, because I felt, compassion, sadness for these people that had to, they're stuck in there. Because I knew they were burning alive and not getting out. There were people cornered in the offices and shit, and just wait until it's over, or couldn't get out. And then I immediately just was thinking of the nursing home. I'm like, and I remember there was a part of me that got upset because I was like, and I now got to deal with this because I'm going to nursing homes and I'm watching, hearing people cry and die. I walk into this nursing home. There were several times that I had to watch. I remember these 4 people that were set in front of me. I mean, it looked like they were so riddled with cancer. It just had less than 2 weeks to live. Oxygen mask and just getting ready, and you just, you don't ever say, you just kind of look, get a confirmation, make sure you make eye contact, acknowledge them, because once you acknowledge that person, you acknowledge their life and they're there. And that's enough, kind of greet them, You know, knowing that you're there for something else. But you're showing up, you're making effort when other people don't. So, yeah, I thought I'd talk about that. And there's something else I wanted to talk about, but yeah, I remember talking to Lisa, and I was so close to telling her, but I didn't want to tell her because I didn't want to scare her. But, yeah. Old too soon, smart too